the opinion turns to the question of what comes next. If Roe and Casey are overruled, where does the abortion question go? Whose question is it now? The answer arrives in the form of a sentence that reads less like a legal conclusion than a closing argument. It is the last line of the prologue, the philosophical capstone of the whole introduction. Here is how the prologue of the opinion ends, quote, "It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives." The people's elected representatives, legislatures, state houses, Congress. The argument the majority is making, philosophically, is that this question, this contested, painful, deeply personal question, was taken from democratic politics in 1973 and is now being given back. Whether you read that as a restoration or as an abandonment depends in large part on where you started. Which is, perhaps, why Alito opened the opinion the way he did, with the fact that Americans hold sharply conflicting views. That sentence at the start and this one at the end of the prologue frame everything in between. The court is saying it cannot resolve a moral question on which the country is split. It can only decide whose job it is to try. That is the architecture of the majority's argument. Roe is wrong. Stare decisis does not save it. The question returns to the people. Whether the architecture holds, whether it can hold against the dissents that were filed the same day, against the half-century of reliance the opinion dismantles, against the lived consequences that began the moment the opinion was published. Those are questions Justice Alito's opinion itself does not answer. Those questions belong to what came 2022. The Supreme Court of the United States handed down a decision the country had been arguing about for years. At its center sat a single sentence. 9 words, written by Justice Samuel Alito for the majority. I'll read them now, exactly as they appear in the United States reports. We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. For 49 years, the constitutional right to an abortion had been the law of the land. Roe v. Wade, decided in 1973. Planned Parenthood v. Casey, reaffirmed in 1992. Both, the court now said, had been wrong from the very beginning. This is the story of how the court arrived at that conclusion, and the reasoning the majority offered to defend it. Whether the court was right to overrule its own precedent is a separate question. It is also a question the opinion itself acknowledges Americans hold sharply conflicting views on. 2022, Justice Samuel Alito delivered the opinion of the court. By the time it closed, nearly half a century of constitutional doctrine had been undone. Roe was overruled. Casey was overruled. And the Mississippi Gestational Age Act stood. The abortion question, the majority wrote, would go back to legislatures, to elections, to the slow, contested work of self-government. What the Constitution did not answer, the people would have to. The opinion that did all of this began with a single, conceding sentence. It is worth hearing again, now that we know where it was heading. Abortion presents a profound moral issue, on which Americans hold sharply conflicting views. That sentence was not an aside. It was the frame. The majority opened by acknowledging the moral chasm and closed by handing it back to politics. Whether that return was a restoration of democratic authority or a constitutional rupture, the dissents would answer. But the dissents are a story for another episode. Next time, the 4 other voices that answered Alito on the same day, the concurrences that agreed with the result but split on the reasoning, and the joint dissent that argued the court had just done something a court should never do. Until then,